Okay, good evening, IB Biology. This is Mr. McGee. We're going to make a tutorial here on the enzyme inhibition and substrate concentration lab that we did on Wednesday, August 26th. If you were not here, please make sure you read the lab sheet, which I'll include on Canvas. But otherwise, what we're going to do is make a tutorial and show everybody step by step how to make a proper table and a graph, and also how to do a statistical test from this. And just like before, if I come here to the sheet, you're going to paste your table here, paste your graph here, and you're going to conduct statistical analysis using a t-test. Unlike last time, you're going to do two different t-tests following the protocols here. Okay, and as mentioned before, instructions are here. I also have instructions on your table this time. So please read through the instructions on the table. If you can say honestly you checked all these off, then your table should be good to go and you can clear these and paste them. Same thing with your graph. Make sure you have all these categories before you paste it. This is going to be very similar to our last lab with just a slight, little bit more of an edge here, and I'll show you why. So here's our data from the other day. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up so that everybody can see this a little bit better. Notice that we have some really wide columns here. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to shrink these columns. And to do that, we have to go up into the top rows. I'm going to click A, and I'm going to highlight all the way to N here. And actually, just to give me some more room, I've highlighted these. I'm going to go over to this box now, and I'm going to click Resize. And I'm going to go ahead and resize this to, let's do 50 and see how this looks. And I think that looks pretty good. What we've done is got rid of a lot of unnecessary space, but it still looks like all the numbers and everything fits. We do have some things that are getting crunched here, but we'll deal with this in just a moment. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what we can do to fix this. First thing, I'm going to click in the corner, and I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to come up here to border and put a border around it. And I'm going to do the same thing with this category. We have in effect two different experiments with uninhibited enzymes and inhibited enzymes. Now what we need to do is we need to try to combine some of these columns, and if I click on A and B and I space it, you'll see that this is actually a cell that has some stuff written in there. So the first thing we're going to do after this is we're going to click up here and drag, and I'm going to try to highlight our titles and headings here. And I'm going to go up here to the color tool, and I'll also click and drag this too, come up here to the color tool. And what this does is it draws your eyes to the heading. It's a really nice way to present everything. Go up here to the color tool. And so if we look at it now, you can clearly see where our data is and where we'll calculate the mean and the standard deviation. And yet you can see everything else in our heading. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to merge some cells together. So, and actually before I do that, let's do this instead. Highlight everything in here, and I'll just go all the way down. We're going to center it. And I'll come over here to the horizontal center. That just makes it look a lot nicer for when we start to put everything together. What we're going to want to do now is put our heading at the top. So I'm going to click uninhibited catalase enzymes and highlight it across. And then we're going to go here to the merge tool and merge that together. And I'll do the same thing down here so we have our title nice and centered. And I'm going to give this actually a different color. I will let you pick this out, but maybe you can pick a color like this or something. And that just kind of draws your eyes up to the title as something kind of unique. Actually, I don't like that color, but I'll let you pick whatever color you want with this. So now we're going to look at our independent variable. We want to make sure we have our unit and our uncertainties. Same thing with our dependent variable. And we want to get rid of any extra cells. This cell is kind of a placeholder for this row here. So I'm going to click these two cells and highlight them. And I'm going to come here to the merge icon again and merge them together. But I want to get it fitted in the center. And so then I'm going to come up to this here and pick up vertically align and go to the middle one here. I should vertically align it. Now we have that nice and neat. I can afford to drag this tool back, but look what happens if I drag it too far. That's a problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here to what's called the text wrapping tool, and I'm going to wrap it up like this. And that allows us to, squish these columns together, and that makes everything fit nice. We're going to do the same thing here with the dependent variable title, except I'm going to click here and drag it all the way across, and we're going to click the merge tool like this. And so this is what's going to draw your eyes to this. You have the independent variable here, and you have the dependent variable title here. All of this represents the dependent variable. And we have a clear title with a unit and uncertainty after each one, and each table is titled. And that's all there is to it. So let's go ahead and do this next one here. I'm going to do this real quick on pause. Okay, so I just fixed the bottom one here while I was on pause. And again, you can go back and see if or how you want to fix anything. Next thing we need to do is we need to calculate the mean and the standard deviation. And to do this, you click on a cell in the mean and you're going to type in equals average. Now notice when I click it, it automatically tries to guess, but make sure it guesses the right cells. We would want cells B4 through L4 highlighted, and it did correctly. So I'm going to click on it and hit enter. Now the computer thinks it's got the hang of it, so I'm going to click check and let it see if it guesses it. But you come over here and make sure that it guessed it correctly. And so go through each row. It's your responsibility to make sure that each cell was calculated properly. The beauty of this is I can click on any random cell here like this one, and I can copy it, and I can actually come down here and highlight all of these cells, and I can paste these cells here too. And look at that. If I come here and check, once again, it calculated correctly, and I can verify that over here like this. And so that's the beauty of this. Once you do it one time, you can cut and paste these equations as long as they correspond to the same column. Let's do the standard deviation, but this time we're going to type in equals STDEV for standard deviation and click on this option here. But now the computer doesn't know what to do, so we're going to have to manually click and highlight the raw data. Make sure you do not highlight the mean or the independent variable, as that's not part of the data. And I'll click enter, and once again click yes to this, and make sure that each one of these corresponds with the proper set of data. And again, I can click and copy this cell here, and I can either do it all manually or I can just come and paste it and save me time. Next thing, we're going to go and highlight these here, and we're going to come over to the rounding option. And it looks like I'm going to have to round these. You can see how that number does this. I'm going to go ahead and round these, and it looks like I'm going to round it to about 2 sig figs. We'll ignore the zeros here. And so 2 sig figs would get me something like this, but we're going to go ahead and round it up one here and give us a decimal point. Let's do the same thing down here. We'll go ahead and round it like this. And there you go. Your table should look really nice. And as of right now, you can pick out your colors that you want as long as it looks presentable. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click and highlight one table at a time and click copy. And when you come here, you're going to go ahead and paste it. And obviously you're going to want to get rid of it like this here to come and paste it. And as you paste it, you may notice it doesn't format it perfectly. So what I would recommend you do is you just highlight all of these, and you can come up here and you can input your own font, and that will help size everything to make sure it fits. But some things still don't fit properly, and so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over this, but you can also use a snipping tool. This is a tool I use on my Microsoft program, and it lets me, I'm not going to take the time to do it perfect, but it lets me snip this out, and then I can come here and copy, and I can paste it as an image. And I like this because it doesn't distort it. It keeps exactly as I do this. Again, this is up to your discretion on how you want to do this. All right, now that we have our two tables, let's go ahead and make our graph. All right, as far as creating our graph, you got to pay attention to this really carefully, and that is because Google Sheets is not the best program. Part of that reason why is because it doesn't let you plot X and Y. Instead, what it does is it lets you plot series, and those do not always correspond to the same type of lab. So essentially what we want to do in any lab is we want to plot the X, which is your independent variable, and we want to plot that with the Y, which is your dependent variable. You don't need the trials. Those are simply used to calculate the mean, and your standard deviation represents the spread of the data. The problem is Google Sheets doesn't know how to look at these numbers. It gets confused with all these. And that means there's really only one fix we can do here. And so what we're going to do, this is really annoying, but we've got to do it. We're going to highlight these cells here and come down below and just kind of paste them like this. Okay? I'm going to go and highlight these cells here. We're going to go ahead and copy the numbers. Let's go ahead and paste this as a value, then it doesn't copy the equation down. Just kind of do that there like this. So what I've done here is I've basically told the computer I want my X and Y axis to be these, and I'm putting it down here like this. But we're going to have to do the same thing for the next one. And to do this, I don't have to copy the X again. Instead, I'm going to copy the Y, and I'm going to paste it right here as a value only. Then I don't have to worry about, then it doesn't copy the equations. So don't do this part, just watch what I do here. When I highlight the data set, I can come here and highlight it like this, just the series in the column, and I can go over here and create a graph like this. And I'm going to come over here to scatter plot like this, and I should have a trend line that looks like this. What the computer doesn't know is what to make of this data, and that's kind of where this gets annoying. I'm actually going to remove this data set there, and I'm going to tell the computer that our, let's see here, add a series. We're actually going to, let me see, the computer's already having issues, and that's why I don't like this. Let's just start from a blank slate here. I'm going to click and insert the chart. What we're going to do is we're going to tell the computer what our series are here. So first of all, data range. We're going to highlight all of this data here and see if it accepts it. Google Sheets can be a hassle. There we go. It accepted it, but it doesn't know what the x-axis or the x-axis is all the time. In this case, it was able to pick it out, but sometimes it doesn't pick it out properly. This is roughly what we want to get. Now the problem is it doesn't give us error bars very well, so I am going to have to clear this out, and we're going to have to do another trick. So clear this out. And so here's the problem. We cannot use these to create error bars, but in general the computer uses these columns to create create the bars or the tread lines. But in order to create error bars, we need to trick the computer, and this is the frustrating part, so just please bear with me. We have to create in each column like this its own separate data point series. Whoops. Just bear with me and follow what I do here. We're going to take this entire column like this. I'm going to go ahead and just copy it, and we're actually going to take these and just move them on down like this. It's extremely frustrating to do this process. I am hitting Control X, that cuts it and lets me paste it as I move along. Now I know that looks really frustrating, but what it's doing essentially is it's keeping this in its own y-axis. I'll show you why here in a minute. So we just did it for this one. Now we're going to need to do it for this one. You're going to need to copy this and paste it here. And just like before, we're going to need to put each data point in its own individual category. We used to use Microsoft Excel all the years that I've taught this, and only last year with the pandemic I had to start doing Google Sheets, and it is really frustrating to have to teach this stuff because it makes no sense. It's not, but that is Google Sheets, unfortunately. All right, having said that, what we've done here is we have our x-axis, we have our y-axis for the inhibited or uninhibited enzymes, we have a y-axis for the uninhibited enzymes, and then what we've done is we've created a separate axis just for each data point. And this is going to allow us to put in our error bars. And again, this is something you don't have to do on Microsoft Excel, but we have to do it in order to hack our way into Google Sheets. So now that we've done this, let's go ahead and try this out here. Sometimes the computer doesn't always work, but I'm going to highlight all of these data sets here, and I'm going to go ahead and click Insert Chart, and I'm just going to ignore what it looks like now and go to Scatter Plot, and let's see what it gets. And that looks like a complete mess to me. All right, so let's go ahead and clear this out here. We'll go ahead and try again without doing this. Let's try this next way. And this is where Google Sheets really doesn't seem to make sense. I'm going to click this first cell, not the x-axis, just my y data. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. I'm going to go ahead and insert the cell and go back to line chart and create scatter plot. And this looks a little better, even though it's messed up. Whoops, just cleared and moved stuff there. Double click again. It hasn't given us an x-axis, so I'm going to click x-axis, and now I can highlight my x like this. And here's the problem. It's saying it wants a row, and it doesn't always do this. So we're going to cancel and come down here and undo that switch rows and columns. There we go. There was the problem. And this sometimes happens, sometimes it doesn't. So now we can enter our x-axis as these columns here, or these cells. Click on those, and we've now told the computer, there we go. We've told the computer what our x-axis is right here, followed by our y-axis down here like this, which is each one of those individual columns, okay? It's very annoying it does this. Sometimes you can play around with the vertically and horizontally, but I think this looks like the profile that we want to get there, okay? Like I said, bear with me because this is pretty frustrating. So I'm going to click right here and delete that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and fill in the gaps. But we have a graph that looks pretty good at this point. So let's go ahead and fill this in. First thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go here to Chart and Axis Titles and go here to Horizontal Axis Title. And this, your horizontal axis, is the amount of substrate. So in this case, we'll say, and I'll let you, of course, put plus slash minus. This is 0.1 milliliters of H2O. Okay, go ahead and hit enter. And you can play around with the font size if you want to in that. Now let's go to vertical axis. And then here we're just going to say rate of reaction. We don't need to put all that other stuff, but we do need plus slash minus. And we said, what was that, 2 milliliters? We'll say 2 milliliters. Parentheses, go ahead and hit enter. And there we go. We have our unit and uncertainty and our headings on the side of our graph. Okay, we can go ahead and close that. Now let's go ahead and do the series. This is the part that gets really confusing to everybody. And so if you can bear with me on here, we're going to go ahead and click series. And what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to pick out the first and the second column here, which should be represented by, I believe this is data series 1. We'll see what happens here when I click on this. But I'm going to try to click this first row, data series 1, and I'm going to go ahead here and come down to tread line and let's see what happens. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click polynomial, and it worked. What we've done here is we've taken this first series. It's technically not the first series, but again, just bear with me here. Our first series after this X here, and we've created a trend line. Now we're going to go up and we're going to now click on the second column here, which should be data series 2. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to enter a trend line for this, and it's curved, so we're going to go ahead and click polynomial like this. So there's our curve. Now we have a curve that beautifully fits those data points, and I like that. And I'll let you decide if you want to change the line thickness. I personally prefer a thinner line, so I'll go back up here to data series 1. We'll go to a 1-point line. I just like it like that. I'm also going to go apply to all series, and I personally like the dot to be a little smaller. Let's do a 4-point dot. See how it shrunk those points like that? And I'm also going to, just my own preference, click on those lines and clear those lines out of there. It says it won't delete it. Let's go here to, grid lines. And if we go to grid lines vertical, we'll click major grid lines. And let's do horizontal. I just like those to be off of there, so we can clear those off like that. Not exactly sure how, well, you do want to kind of have something on the bottom here, but we can play around with this later. All right, we'll go back up here to series. Next thing, and the last thing we need to do, we have our trend lines. We have our 2 individual rows of data, or our 2 individual trends. The last thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to apply error bars. And these are a little frustrating to do. And the reason why is each data point here at the bottom, each individual data point has to have its own error bar correspond to the standard deviation. And so the way to do this, it's a little time consuming, but it's really not too bad. I'll do it right here. You have to go through each data point. So we'll skip the 0, but this 18.8, that corresponds to the first one, and its standard deviation is 3.0. So what we're going to do is we're going to first find that data point, and I believe that was the 3rd series over, because it looks like 1, 2, 3. Nope, actually it's the 4th one, so we'll go to 4th series, and we're going to go here, and we're going to enter a 3.0 or just a 3. Come down here to error bar and hit constant, and we'll enter 3. And there we go, we got an error bar. Now we're going to come to the 32, which should be the next one. And you can see 32 is in the next column. We're going to enter 2.9 for 32. Okay. I'm going to enter, row 5, I believe. Error bars, it's kind of tedious that you have to do this. We'll enter 2.9. There you go. And let's do a couple more together as a class, and then I'll pause the rest of this so you can see. But we've got the next one, which is 46, and that would correspond to this dot here. We want 12.7. That is a big spread there people had in their data. Let's go to 6, and we're going to enter error bar, and constant is 12.7. That is a huge spread in the data, so look how big that data point is. And let's do another one or two here. Data point 7, error bar, constant, and 5.9. And let's go ahead and do the last one here. 7.1 is our data series 8. Error bars, constant, and 7.1. There you go. I've just created error bars for each data point to show the spread. And now you're going to do it for the last ones here, which I believe this would be the 9th series, 10th, 11th, 12th, all the way on down. And so you would just progressively click on these, go down to error bar, and make sure you enter constant, and it has to correspond to the standard deviation. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick on pause. Okay, I just went ahead and completed this chart. And so if I click on this and move it over here, you can see I have my two separate categories, and I have error bars for each one of those. And you can see our data points had data that was all over the place. The very last thing we need to do right now is we need to add a legend to this. And this is really tricky. And to be honest, it's going to be kind of an issue on here. You may be better off just kind of copying it like this. And I don't know if you have a paint program or something at home where you can do, one option you can do is take a snipping tool like this, and you can simply snip and copy your graph. Well, I guess it's, it's a little blurry here, but you can snip and copy your graph like this, and if you were to snip and copy it, you can move this into a paint program like this, and you can manually come up and draw your own key off to the side like this. That's just if you wanted to do this. I'm not going to require it for this lab, but on your IA, this would be one way to touch it up and make it look really nicely. But the one way I'd like you to try to at least see how it works for here is you're going to double click, and then you come back over here to customize, and we have legend. And what you're going to do is go, let's just do to the right, and you can see it puts all of these colors, which really represent each of these aisles, or columns. It is really frustrating. But we're only going to title the first and the second one, and that represents these tread lines here, the first and the second series. And so I'm only going to click here on the blue, double click, and I'm going to type in uninhibited, and I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to click on the red one, double click, and hit inhibited, and hit enter. And so that's what I'm going to leave it off there as. I don't know how well this is going to work. I'm going to try and see if I can click and delete that one there. It says it won't let me delete it. So if anyone has a way to delete these other colors here, I guess you could come through and hit, white or something. I don't know. There might be a way to get rid of these, but I just think all of those other ones don't matter. They just match up to other data points. So if you have a better way of doing that, please let me know, because I would be definitely interested. But we at least have our colors here to identify each of these categories right there. Okay, so we'll leave it as this. Now again, go ahead and copy your graph, and then you would paste it right there. Okay, the very last thing we're going to do is calculate the results of a t-test, and except we're going to do two different t-tests this time. One was substrate concentration. And this one we're going to see, is there a significant difference between our results and substrate concentration? You're going to take the control group of 0 and pin it against the extreme group of 10 milliliters of peroxide. And if we find significance, we will know that there is an effect. And so we're going to take this set of data here, and we're going to pin it against this set of data down there. Okay? So again, what would be a null hypothesis? A null hypothesis is essentially a default position. Okay? Do a t-test on this here to see what happens, and if you can establish it, then you are good to go. Okay? Next one, you're going to do a t-test, but this is going to be of inhibition. You need to pick any column or any row in each of these categories that match up, and if you see a significance, you will know that there is inhibition is causing an effect. So to do this, we'll pick the extreme category here of 10, and that's because I think I see a big effect here, at least at the 10. What we're going to do is, at the 10 milliliter of hydrogen peroxide, you'll highlight this column here, and then you'll highlight this column down here, and so we'll do a t-test between these two rows, I should say, not columns. Okay? And to do the t-test again, I'm going to let you try to do some more practice. Please refer to my other tutorials and the instruction, but just a quick recap, what you do is enter equals t-test, and then you click enter like this. You can look at the question mark if you need to see exactly what to enter, but you're going to enter one set of data and hit a comma, enter another row of data, hit comma. Then you're going to enter one or two tails for a test. I say just use 2 by default, and comma, and then you're going to enter if it's paired, which is a 1, or a 3 if it is unpaired. Most of the time, including this lab, it's going to be a 3 for unpaired. Okay, I will let you test the results, but I'm just going to do 2 here for an example that are not part of your lab. I'm going to highlight this one all the way across, hit comma, highlight this one across. Notice I'm not including the mean and standard deviation. I'm going to hit 2-tailed t-test, and this is unpaired data, so I'm going to enter a 3, and now I'm going to hit enter. I have a result here. I'm going to go ahead and round this down to, whoops, I'm going to go ahead and round this, and let's go ahead and round this to 3 sig figs there, okay? Now my 3 sig figs, it is below the critical limit, which is p.0 or 0.05. And therefore, if this was my result, I would reject my null hypothesis and I would go with the alternative. We have overwhelming evidence that those 2 rows are significantly different. Again, that was a sample. Those are not the ones you're supposed to test. I'd like you to test it and see what you conclude. And you just simply here can write what you get and then put a final conclusion here. What does this lab tell you about enzyme inhibition? I know this was a while, but these skills are crucial to learn. And again, you can go back, fast forward, and do as needed. But please take the time to go through this video, and I'll give you, like I said, a week to give you that extra time as needed to do this lab. And remember, I am here if you need me. This is Mr. McGee, and I look forward to seeing your results. Bye-bye.